Welcome back to Invention Pete's. Glad to see you here. So what we're talking about today is mounting. How are we going to get this blade attached to that truck, along with the hydraulics and things like that. So if this is your first time here, make sure you like the video, comment, tell us what you think, tell us what you want to hear about, and subscribe. We got a lot of great content coming, a lot of great content on the channel, so be sure to check it out. So what we're going to talk about is how to make this blade attached to that truck. We'll show you how to do it right here. So what we're going to start with talking about is the truck side of the plow assembly, mounting the hydraulics, and how the blade actually attaches to the truck itself. So to start with, the blades and hydraulic assembly is already started by mounting to the front hitch receiver that I've talked about in another video. I'll make sure to have a link down below to show you about that and why I installed that and use that as my mounting point. So you can always buy kits and things like that, but they kind of hang down kind of weird. But a front hitch receiver has enough tongue load and weight and things like that to use my conventional blade with these hydraulics. All I simply did was on the very lower piece that hang down, I just added a couple extra brackets, drilled some holes in that. So that is how I mount my plow A-frame to the actual truck itself. I'll make sure to show a better view as I'm talking about this. And as far as the hydraulics, I did it a pretty simple way. I started with just using a 2-inch square tube that comes out, made a lower bracket to mount the hydraulic ram itself, because this is the old Western Isarmatic style, so it has the main pump and motor as the main body itself with a lift ram integral to it, and the hydraulic valve body is this right here and is run by electronics. You had the older style one that had the cables that came off of. They just kind of updated the hydraulic end to go with the electronic, so it makes it very basic, very simple. It has only 3 little spool valves that actually do the work. So I like it because it's simple and it comes off easy. I don't have anything hiding underneath the hood. I don't have anything hiding on the plow. So it kind of keeps all the centralized work to right here. So mounting that, I just made a riser that comes up high enough to use the arm. This arm I made, you can still use the same arm that comes on older plows and things like that. It has the chain hook. I decided to use a bolt style, but all you need is an arm that supports it right there. As this goes up and down, that moves this bolt to carry load of the chain. So if you know anything about plows, this is pretty simple in how they look. I just made a very basic little L-shaped frame to hold the hydraulics and carry the plow load on the 2-inch receiver that I'm using with my front hitch receiver. So on the plow A-frame itself, which is this A-shaped style, they call that the A-frame on the plows. When you talk about buying new parts or you build them and things like that, you have everything done by the 2 points on the A-frame. So the central front point is what allows the blade to pivot. You have hydraulic rams on each side that help push the blade side to side. So they all attach to the mount of the A-frame. And this is one that I've actually kind of welded together a little bit and made it work. So when you add tabs on both sides of that front hitch receiver as your mounting points, you now have to make those mounting points on that match up with this. And that gets to be where it gets a little bit tricky. You need a welder. You got to be thinking about this in a big scale thing. So to do that, what I did was I originally sat the plow on the ground, took this A-frame and jacked it up with my floor jack to make sure it was parallel to the ground. And the reason you do that is you make sure this A-frame is parallel because that's your pivot point. When it's pivoting, you want that blade to move parallel and square to the ground. If this A-frame was tipped up, the blade corners would then be dipping in and pushing down in the corners of the ground, which cause excessive wear on the plow edges, cause your cutting edge to wear out more, and you'll dig into the ground, things like that. So I initially started with my A-frame level. I drove my truck up as it was, so I knew my mounting points, the height they were, and I knew the point that this was level. So I knew where that area was, and I just had to make a connection between the A-frame and the truck itself. Coincidentally, I had this old sway bar floating around in my shop from an old project that actually had the right spacing between here and there to fit up with those mounting tabs on the truck. So I simply mounted the sway bar to the lower A-frame. I just took the old mounts that they were on there, just cut them off because I had no use for them. They were no value to me. So I just simply welded this to there. And now when you have an angle like this, that can break easy, especially when you start pushing up a truck weight, things like that, when you're ramming the snowbanks, that can break. So what I did was I took these extra pieces of steel that I had laying around and made a mount that goes welded down there and then up by the actual hinge point itself. So you're now creating a dynamic triangle to help support the load of the plow when it's being rammed into a snowbank, and make sure it's a nice strong joint, because down there, just those welds, it would work, but it's still not that super strong. The neat thing about using a sway bar is it's spring steel. So your pivot points and holes aren't going to really wallow out that much over time, because it's just a hardened thing. So it's kind of a pain to drill out with a drill bit. So you either got to use a die grinder or just use a smaller bolt and just change them out more often, because plows usually have a big 3/4 inch bolt pin because they take the load better and they wear out less and are less likely to shear. So you just have to be aware when you were putting a smaller pin in than a normal 3/4 inch that you might have to change it more often, and just be aware of how much wear they're using. Other than that, that is how I mounted my A-frame to the truck, and it actually works out well. And this hump in the loop does not even come in contact with the bottom of my plow pump itself, so it actually works out pretty well. So that is how I did the A-frame to tie in with the truck itself. So everybody's application is going to be different, and how they build their truck mount dictates how this A-frame mount is going to mount up and the dimensions that are needed. So if you're going to do this, set the truck side up first, then drive it up on a flat level surface up to the plow where you think it needs to be, and start building the plow A-frame to suit. Because if you build this first, then you have to make sure that coincides with it, so that way when I'm loaded up this plow and when I'm plowing down on the surface, this A-frame is parallel to the ground, so my blade turns are nice and smooth. They're not digging in. I'm not putting excessive force on the hydraulics themselves. So that's where it gets to be a little bit trickier. I've done this with a few trucks because I've changed this plow over from truck to truck before, so it's not a big deal to me, and this has worked for me for many, many seasons. And I've gone from a truck that was 9-inch lifted with 35s down to a stock 1500 HD, and now I'm going to a 2500 HD as well. So this is how I do it, and this is how it works. So hopefully this all makes sense. If anything, like the video, comment, tell us what you think, tell us what you want to hear about, tell us what else we need to know more specifically, if that would help out as well, and subscribe. We got a lot of great content coming, a lot of great content on the channel, so be sure to check it out, and remember to have a great adventure.